All right, so let's get started working on the assignment. And the assignment, the real assignment, right? First assignment, which is assignment number 2, that asks us to implement the prototype of a website, right? And it asks us to build quite a few pages. And for the first assignment, we ask you to create several static pages that allow us to explore mobile first responsiveness and whatnot. All right, and it asks you to create it in the assets folder inside of the views folder, and then implement it for each individual type of object, right? To create several folders where you're going to do your work. So, for instance, in the views directory, we're going to create a user folder where we're going to put all the files for that deal with a user, and also another folder for the website, one for the pages, and one for the widgets. Notice that I am not using plural. I don't like plural words because they are inconsistent, and especially like in if you're creating collections or tables or objects or classes, right? You don't want to have to remember how do you spell that, right? It's better to just standardize it on singular. So anyway, I already had started with the user. I'm just going to rename this so that we can recreate these. So I'm just going to rename this user old, and I'll create a separate folder called user where we can play around with this. So we'll say user. So anyway, so let's create here a file. The first file that we're asked to implement, the login HTML file. Okay, and let's see if we can navigate there. So here we'll just do an h1 login and try to navigate to that page. Actually, do I have the server started? Let me start it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I believe it was already started. All right, it's compiling or transpiling all these. All right, I think it's, let me see, local 4200. There we go, right? So this is the landing page that I think everybody should have, right, for now. And in there we have the assets folder with the views and then user and then login. There it is. So there's our login page which we just created. One of the first things that we'll do is that we're going to add a Bootstrap to this, right? And Bootstrap has already been installed, I believe. Let's see. Maybe last week we installed it. Where is it? Did I move it? Maybe I moved it. Let me see. I probably put it under assets. I did not. Okay, all right. So let me see if it's under node modules. Anybody see it? Bootstrap? No. Okay, it's not deployed. Okay, so let's add it. So from terminal, I'm going to stop this and say npm install Bootstrap. I could have sworn we installed it last week. Oh, maybe it was like a demo site that we created, perhaps. Is that what we did? Maybe, yeah. All right, so this is going to download Bootstrap, or if you prefer Angular materials or some other grid layout library, feel free to use that instead. All right, so installed it, and it should be somewhere in here. There it is, Bootstrap. If you go in here and look at the distribution directory, it has the CSS, it has the fonts, and it has a JavaScript that go along with that. So let's copy the dist directory, and we're going to copy it into the assets folder. Okay, we're going to put it actually in a directory called vendors, and in here is we're going to put libraries that don't belong to us. It's somebody else's, right? Third-party vendors that are providing these libraries. We're going to put them in here just to distinguish between what we create and what we are borrowing from somewhere else. Okay, so I'm going to put in here, and I'm going to create another directory called Bootstrap, just to know that this is the vendor, and I'm going to put it in there, dist. There we go. All right. So inside our login page, we're going to now load our Bootstrap library. So we'll do a link and do an href, and we'll make our way up to up. Okay, is that the vendors? There we go. Then we'll go down to Bootstrap, and then down to dist, and then to CSS, and then to Bootstrap. Now, there's several versions of this. One of them, notice, is the bootstrap.css, and the other one is bootstrap-min.css, right? So the min version is a minified version, meaning that all spaces, all white spaces, have been removed and to optimize the download of these files. Yes. Later on, we're going to replace this to instead use a CDN version. Okay. Right now, we are this Bootstrap CSS is going to be hosted on our servers. Right, folks that visit our pages, right, are going to download the CSS file onto their browsers, right, to style it. And normally that's okay, right? But certainly it would be even better if instead of using it and downloading from our servers, right, even better would be that they download it from a even faster server, right, or a server that is more popular than ours, like Google or Facebook or LinkedIn. Chances are that they have already visited these other servers before coming to you. Right? Chances are that those websites are much more famous than yours. Okay, so their browser probably has already downloaded that library from these other websites. Yes, and so when it gets to us, if we're linking it to the same place where these folks are downloading it from, the browser, it says, oh, I already downloaded that file. I'm not going to bother re-downloading that, right? So actually, it would improve performance, right, if we link it to these famous servers. Make sense? The only problem is that if we do that now, we would lose a lot of the support that the IDE can give us, right? Like type ahead and be able to, as we type, you're filling the blanks for us. Yes? So for development, it's okay to link to local versions of these files. But when we go out to production, right, and really make this live, right, finally live, instead we're going to link to the CDNs. Okay? Right? That's at the end of the semester. Right? Part of the last homework is to revert to CDN versions. All right? Okay. Okay, so we have the Bootstrap. We can also load here scripts that, if I could type script, Bootstrap also has a JavaScript that goes along with the library. We're not going to use any of the features yet in the Bootstrap JavaScript library, but nevertheless, let's load it. So it's src. And it's the same directory. It's vendors, Bootstrap, dist. And in here we have JS, JavaScript. There it is. / and in here we have, there it is, bootstrap-min.js. Okay? So this JavaScript is also part of that library, Bootstrap library. Okay? It's a fairly large library. Let's link to it. All right. Everybody okay? All right. Awesome. All right, so if we reload our page, oops, what happened? Oh, did I stop my server? Oh, yeah, Oh no. ng serve. Okay, come on. Let's go. Did it come up? Where's my login page? Oh no, what happened to my login page? Source, did it come back? Login, there's my login page. And why are you not rendering? Inspect. Elements, head, body, and my body is empty. Why is my body empty? Oh, okay. I never closed the script tag, maybe. Let's see. All right, I think that's it. There's my login page, a review. And it's not loading my style sheet. And that's because I never told it that this is a style sheet. There it is. Okay. Right, so we can link many types of files that are dependent, that this document depends on. We need to tell it, tell the browser how to interpret that one file. Right? We're telling it it's a style sheet. Interpret it as a style sheet. Okay. All right, there it is. We have our login page, and let's add a couple of things here. For logging in, we'll need an input field for typing our username, and we'll need another input field for our password. Okay. If we reload, we see those input fields there. Let's make that a little bit prettier. For instance, since we are targeting mobile first, one of the things that we might want to do is to have this take up the entire width of the page, right? So that on a phone, it would take on the entire width of the screen. Yes? So let's do that. To do that, we're going to apply a class, right? Classes allow us to associate styling information with that one element, right? So one of the common ones is the form control class, which is defined by Bootstrap. Okay, and if I reload, you'll notice that now that input field takes up the entire width of the page, right? Which would look nice on a phone, maybe not on a screen, right? But we can fix that a little later. And how about the other input field as well? We can do the same thing, class form control. Right, there they are. They take up the entire width of the page. Notice that they're kind of flush with the edges, right? So let's so it looks a little bit weird. You don't see where it begins, where it ends, right? It just kind of loses itself on either extreme. So what we could do is wrap the entire content with a div and use one of several container classes that are declared by Bootstrap. Right? You could say, just by itself, a div won't do anything. Right? So if we reload, notice that it doesn't do anything. Right? It doesn't add anything. But if we paint it a little bit by adding some styling, we can add container fluid. Container fluid, as opposed to container, there's two well-known, container and container fluid. A container adds sizing or adds margins on either end, right? They both do that. A container by itself targets the large screen, right? So that on large screens, noted that it adds width on either side, and as it becomes smaller, kind of and passes certain threshold, right? It resizes the content to be adaptive to a smaller screen, all the way to its smallest version where it just takes the entire width of that screen. You see that? So that's how container works. It's mostly targeted at larger screens, right? But today I just want to talk about the small screen first, right? So fluid. Let's go with fluid. Fluid just targets the small screen, and it just adds just margins on either end, right? So 15 pixel gutter on either end, and it doesn't change the width of the page. Okay. All right. So let's keep going. If you want to see what it looks like on a phone, you can bring up the inspector. The inspector by default renders on the right-hand side of the screen of the browser, and if you click on this toolbar here, it renders it the way it would look like on a page. In this case, on an iPhone 6 Plus. So that's what it would look like, and you might say, well, really? Is that what it would look like on an iPhone? Typically, what the iPhone is trying to do, what the phones are trying to do, is that you can't see any of that. What phones are trying to do is be as close as possible as what it would render on a desktop. They're trying to be your desktop, right? And so what they'll do is that they'll scale the content, to fit in the small screen. Now, ideally, what we'd like to do is says, don't do that. Don't scale. Leave it at its original 1-to-1 ratio. For that, we give you as part of the assignment. Is this the project description? Done. We give you a couple of meta tags right here. Okay, this meta tag over here, if you add it to the head of your HTML document, oops, right, and then you refresh. Notice what we've done here is we've told the browser, hey browser, don't do what you normally do, right, to scale down the pages. This made sense early on when phones were just coming out, right? And nobody knew this idea of mobile computing and that we had to be responsive. None of that existed. Before 2007, right? There were no considerations for any of that 10 years ago. And so what browsers did on a small screen is they tried to reproduce whatever the desktop did. Yes. And so you had to pinch and zoom to see what it was, or maybe double tap. It would zoom in an area and then it would zoom out. Yes? But today, since we understand these new ideas that, well, no, your page should adapt to whatever size screen is, the idea of resizing or scaling it down just makes no sense. Just leave it, and I'll scale up so you can actually read it, right? So we're eliminating the needs for pinch and zooming anymore, right? It is already formatted for that small screen. And for a large screen, it'll also look good. That's what it means to be responsive, right? It'll look it'll look fine on either one. Everybody okay? Right, so that meta tag says don't scale. Actually, I told it to scale 1.5. I'm going blind, so I always scale it up a little bit. But a better practice is to just scale it down to just 1, right? 1-to-1 ratio, right? So if I go and see on the desktop, it'll look the same way on the desktop or on the phone. Make sense? But notice that it still can be it can be read just fine. All right. Is my TA here? Oh, you're here. Okay, just a couple more things, and then I'd like to start helping out with the setting up of the first assignment. All right, so here's the login. Typically, we'd like to be able to provide some placeholder that tells us what kind of information we're expecting. Also, it is also good practice to configure the type of the content that we're expecting. And also, often is a good idea to uniquely identify our content. Right? Notice the more and more data that attributes that we're adding, the less, the harder it is to read from left to right. Yes? And as you've certainly seen in 4500 and in software development or software engineering, the code that you write is not really for yourself, right? You code for the team. You code for others. Your code will outlive you and whatever you can do to your source code to make it easier for others to read, the better, right, in the long run. So this having to scroll left and right is very annoying. So ideally you would break this up into separate lines, right, so that it makes it easier to read for everybody else. Right, so that's one of the best practices I'm going to be looking for when you submit your source code. Right, there's a couple of in the rubric. There's some points for that. So here's some placeholders as well for the password. So password. So here might be some example data that we're expecting. Also, the type is this is password. And the ID is password as well, password. And we're going to break it up into individual rows to make it easier for the TAs and myself to read. And there we go. We have login and whatnot here, right? So let's make it a little bigger so we can see. Plus, one of the things that you'll find yourself doing as well is overriding some of the Bootstrap styling. Notice that by default, Bootstrap does not add margins below its input fields, right? So they're one right on top of the other, right? So to make it look a little prettier, and what we can do is override the styling that we are using for Bootstrap. So the way we could do that is to declare our own style sheet. Our own style sheet in a separate file, href, and we'll put it under CSS directory, and we'll call it styles.css. And we already had one. Wait, let me see. Do we already have one? Oh no, I did add it. Okay, and this is exactly what I was going to write. In the style sheet. And what we're doing here is that it says, hey, we're going to grab all the input fields. We're going to grab all the input fields, and we're going to add a 5-pixel margin at the bottom. Okay, right? So that's going to transform the styles for all input fields. Right? So if we do that and we refresh, you'll notice that it added a 5-pixel margin at the bottom of the input field. From there on, any buttons, anything that you add down below will still have those that styling. For instance, we might have here either a button. So this might be login. That's pretty ugly. We can style it. Class button. And then, so that adds the default coloring of the button. We can give it a different color instead of the default button. Bootstrap has several color schemes, right? That gives it, and they give it a naming convention, such as primary color and secondary color and colors for danger or colors for alert boxes for information, right? So some generic namings, right, for the intended use of the color, right? Colors that might mean something in Western culture, but might mean something else in a completely different culture. Here, primary color, we like blue. For some reason, blue is a primary color. And we might have here also, so that makes it blue. There it is. And we might also make it block, meaning to render as block. Take up the entire width of the page. So there it is. Again, to make it easier for folks on a small screen to tap on that small button, right? And again, we're going to break it up into individual lines, so it makes it easy to read. Since we want this button, when we click on it, to navigate to other pages, we're going to use anchors and href to refer to other pages, such as register.html, which we don't have. Right? That if you click on it, it's going to navigate to a page that doesn't exist, right? But you need to implement. All right. I'm gonna stop here. I want to leave a couple minutes at the end to help folks with their assignment. All right. All right. Thank you.